A single father with $186 to his name opened his door to a freezing stranger, and 6 weeks later, that choice would decide whether he kept the only home his daughter had left. Stay with me to the end, because the moment her daughter walks through his door changes everything. And if you believe quiet fathers deserve stories where courage still matters, subscribe to Soul Dad Stories before we begin. Excuse me, sir, could I sit on your porch until the county plow comes through? I won't bother you. Vincent Rowan stepped out of his workshop light and stared at the woman standing in the freezing rain. How long have you been out there? A while. My car slid off this county road. Are you hurt? I don't think so. You walked here. A little over a mile. I saw your light. In this, have you eaten anything? Not since this morning, but please, I don't want to impose. Come inside. I have soup. Oh no. I saw your little girl asleep by the table. I shouldn't come into a stranger's workshop with his child there. Behind him, a small voice said, Dad. I'm right here, Lucy. That lady's shaking. I know. Can I get Mom's blue blanket? Vincent's throat tightened. Yes, bring it here. The woman shook her head. Sir, really, I can wait outside. No, ma'am, you can't. That was Vincent Rowan, a widowed single father with $186 in his checking account. 2 late mortgage payments and a 7-year-old daughter sleeping 10 feet behind him. The city was already trying to buy the workshop that kept them fed. A contractor still owed him $1,200 and had stopped answering his phone. The food in his refrigerator was meant to stretch through the weekend, and he had just invited an elderly stranger inside when he could barely protect what remained of his own family. Lucy returned carrying a faded blue blanket her mother had sewn before she died. The woman took it with both hands. Thank you, she whispered. Vincent set a wooden chair beside the space heater and heated a packet of chicken soup on the burner near his workbench. Nothing homemade, nothing expensive. But the woman held the warm cup as though someone had handed her something precious. Her name was Eleanor. Vincent didn't ask for a last name. A woman her age had walked a mile in freezing rain after sliding into a ditch, and what he needed to know first was whether she could breathe clearly and whether she had hit her head. Everything else could wait. While he called the county's non-emergency line, Eleanor's eyes drifted to the drawings under his drafting lamp. Ironwood, landing the header read, Shaw Meridian Development. Her fingers tightened around the cup. Vincent saw it. He said nothing. The dispatcher confirmed both roads into Marrow Creek had closed. Tow trucks were hours out. No officer could reach the house safely that night. Keep her warm, the dispatcher said, and watch for confusion, drowsiness, or any sign she stopped shivering. So Eleanor stayed. By morning, the freezing rain had turned Marrow Creek to glass. Vincent woke before 5 and checked on her twice. She was alert, but her hands were still unsteady and a dark bruise had spread across one shoulder. The moment the county road reopened, he drove her to an urgent care clinic 20 minutes out. Lucy waiting with him in the truck while Eleanor checked herself in. He never saw the identification she handed the receptionist. With her permission, a nurse told him afterward mild hypothermia, dehydration, bruising from the crash. Nothing broken, no serious head injury. She needed rest fluids and someone nearby for a day. Vincent listened harder than Eleanor did. That was the kind of man he'd become after Rachel died. He checked food labels twice. Tested smoke alarms before the batteries expired. He kept emergency numbers taped inside the pantry door and a flashlight in every room. 14 months earlier, he'd been the person other families trusted to spot danger before it became an accident. Now, most mornings, he was just trying to braid his daughter's hair. That side's lower, Lucy told him the morning after the storm. I know. You said that yesterday and I fixed it yesterday. You put a hat over it. That still counts. She smiled into her cereal. Rachel had once braided without looking. She could pack a lunch, answer a contractor's call, and remind Vincent about a dentist appointment all at once. She'd worked as an electrical forewoman for Northline Structural Services. Vincent had spent 17 years as a construction estimator and safety documentation specialist reviewing quantities access plans and the paperwork contractors treated as a nuisance. 3 days before Rachel died, Vincent reviewed the temporary stairs at a Northline distribution center outside Akron. The load number on the plan didn't match the steel holding the structure up. He filed a warning through Northline's internal system. The system received it. Someone opened it. Then someone marked it resolved. There was no repair report, no second inspection, no engineer's signature. The next morning, the stair assembly shifted during a crew change. Rachel was on it. Northline's final report claimed she'd entered a restricted area before clearance. The insurer used that line to dispute most of the family's claim. The company sent flowers. The record kept the blame. Vincent never went back to a construction site. He turned the workshop behind the house into a small estimating business, so he could raise Lucy alone, reviewing plans, preparing permit packages, and checking budgets for contractors who needed experienced eyes but couldn't afford a large firm. Some months, it covered everything. That winter, it didn't. A contractor owed him $1,200 and had gone silent. The mortgage was 2 months late. Then Marrow Creek offered to buy his home. The city called it voluntary acquisition. The offer arrived in a polished envelope stamped ironwood. Landing a $465 million project promising luxury apartments, retail, a hotel, and hundreds of jobs on the old mill property. The public renderings showed a service road curving north around Birch Street. Vincent's workshop stood directly in its path anyway. He couldn't move the business without losing clients. He couldn't replace the property for what the city had offered. And the house held nearly every ordinary memory Lucy still had of her mother. Rachel's pencil marks climbed the kitchen doorway one birthday at a time. The cedar chest in the workshop still held the blue blanket. The house wasn't worth $465 million. To Vincent, it was worth everything. Eleanor meant to leave the day after urgent care. The repair shop had other news. Her rental needed a front axle assembly and the storm had delayed the part. The town's only hotel had lost heat when ice took down a service line. Vincent offered her the small room above the workshop for another night. She tried to pay him. He refused. She bought groceries instead. Lucy started calling her Miss Eleanor, then Miss Ellie, without asking permission. At first, Vincent didn't leave them alone together. That wasn't cruelty. It was parenting, and Eleanor respected it. She helped Lucy with fractions while he worked 10 feet away. She mended the torn strap on Lucy's backpack, washed every dish she used, and folded Rachel's blue blanket each morning before returning it to the cedar chest. One evening, he found her in the hallway looking at a framed photograph. Rachel, in a hard hat and orange vest, one arm around Vincent, the other around a much younger Lucy. "She looks strong," Eleanor said. She was. What happened? Vincent looked at the photograph. A warning was ignored. She saw the answer cost him something and didn't ask for more. The roads cleared after 4 days. The hotel restored heat. Eleanor could have left town. Instead, she rented a furnished room over a pharmacy 2 blocks away, and she still came by most afternoons. Partly because Lucy expected her, partly because she'd become interested in the ironwood documents spread across Vincent's table, and partly because after years of speaking to her own daughter through assistants and unanswered messages, she'd found a house where people set an extra plate on the table without asking what she could offer in return. Vincent noticed she understood more than she admitted. She recognized old drainage standards. She knew why developers separated public drawings from contractor revisions. She could read a redevelopment agreement and hear what it was trying not to say. But she never took control of the work. The discovery belonged to Vincent. A small excavation company had sent him a contractor drawing and asked him to estimate drainage costs. It carried the same permit number as the plans shown to Birch Street residents. The plans were not the same. The public version routed heavy trucks around the northern edge of the mill. The contractor version ran them through 11 homes. The public version showed a smaller drainage system. The contractor version needed nearly twice the capacity. Then Vincent checked the soil report. The engineer had certified the ground conditions 3 days before the samples were supposedly collected. One plan could reassure a neighborhood. The other could make the development profitable. They couldn't both be valid. 2 weeks after the storm, Marrow Creek held its first public hearing on Ironwood Landing. Councilman Derek Sloan sat at the center of the long table, 52, silver-haired, careful, with every word, almost never visibly angry. Derek didn't threaten people. He explained things to them until resistance sounded unreasonable. He spoke about revitalization, tax growth, responsible transition. He called the displacement of families property consolidation. He called low purchase offers early participation opportunities. When Vincent's name was announced, Derek glanced at his notes. He knew Vincent had rejected the city's offer. He saw a widower in a repaired brown jacket who worked alone behind his house. He didn't see the man who'd spent 17 years finding mistakes before concrete was poured. Vincent set the public plan under the chamber camera. Then he set the contractor version beside it. Which one did the city approve? Derek kept smiling. Technical documents are revised as projects develop. Vincent pointed to Birch Street. One plan keeps the road north of these houses. The other removes all 11. The project's purpose hasn't changed. The land being taken did. A murmur moved through the chamber. He showed the drainage figures and the dates on the soil report and kept it simple. One plan had been shown to the public. A different plan had gone to contractors. The signatures didn't match the work. The city engineer asked for both documents. After 12 minutes of whispered consultation, the council postponed the vote 45 days. It wasn't a victory. It was time. Outside residents crowded around Vincent. Some wanted reassurance. Others wanted to know whether the city could still force them to sell. He didn't promise what he couldn't guarantee. All we proved is that somebody has to explain the plans, he said. Now we see whether they will. Eleanor waited at the bottom of the steps. You stopped a $465 million vote with 2 sheets of paper. I delayed it. Those families just got 45 more days. He looked back at the crowded building. That matters. By Monday morning, the system had answered. A city inspector arrived at Vincent's workshop with a clipboard and a printed complaint. The home business permit was suspended. The inspector cited an electrical panel that had passed 3 years earlier. A new occupancy classification accessibility requirements normally applied to businesses receiving walk-in customers. Vincent had no walk-in customers. The fine was $3,650. The estimated upgrades came to $28,400. He could appeal. The appeal could take 3 months. Until then, he couldn't legally operate from the workshop. 2 clients canceled within 48 hours. Both had received messages claiming his business was under investigation. By Friday, his available balance dropped below $100. That afternoon, Lucy came downstairs holding a white envelope covered in purple stars. Inside was the money she'd saved for a school trip to the Columbus Science Museum. I don't have to go, she said. Vincent closed the envelope and pressed it back into her hands. That is not your bill to pay. But you need money. He crouched in front of her. I need you to be 7. Your job is school cartoons and complaining about my cooking. Your grilled cheese is burned. See, you're doing excellent work, she smiled. Eleanor watched from the kitchen doorway. The next morning, Vincent found a suitcase beside the front door. Eleanor had packed the few things she kept at the house. You're leaving town. I think I should. Why? Derek Sloan didn't know I was involved until after the hearing. I think the inspection happened because of me. He closed your business because I challenged him, and I may be giving him another reason. Vincent carried the suitcase back into the living room. Don't let Derek decide when you leave. Lucy appeared in the hallway. Are you still coming Sunday? Eleanor looked at her a long moment. Yes, I'm still coming Sunday. She almost told Vincent the truth that morning. She didn't, and it was the first real mistake she made with him. She had reasons, but none of them made the silence fair. For 3 years, Eleanor had accused Shaw Meridian's contractors of hiding safety problems without finding enough proof to force action. Her daughter Claire had called her concerns incomplete and emotional. Company lawyers had warned that unsupported accusations could expose Eleanor to litigation and end whatever chance remained of repairing that relationship. She feared that if she told Vincent who she was too soon, he'd believe Shaw Meridian had sent her to watch him. She feared Claire would learn where she was shut down the quiet investigation and take control of the records before Eleanor knew what they proved. So she waited. First for the contractor files, then for confirmation, then for one more document. Each day she delayed made the truth harder to tell. 3.5 weeks after the storm, Eleanor arrived at Vincent's kitchen carrying her leather bag. The workshop was still closed, so he'd moved his work to the table, an old laptop beside Lucy's crayons and a stack of overdue bills. Eleanor set a worn business card in front of him. Eleanor Shaw, founding engineer, Shaw Meridian Development. Vincent read it twice. You founded the company. Claire Shaw is your daughter. Yes. Claire Shaw was 44 chief executive of Shaw Meridian and one of the wealthiest women in the Midwest. The magazines called her disciplined, efficient, nearly impossible to pressure. How long were you going to wait? I kept telling myself I needed proof first. You sat in my house while her company was trying to take it. I know. You watched me lose my permit. I know. And you still said nothing. Eleanor lowered her eyes. I was afraid you'd think I'd been sent here. Were you? No. Then you should have told me. She didn't defend herself. You're right. Vincent pushed the card back across the table. For the first time since the storm, he didn't invite her to stay for dinner. Eleanor opened her leather bag. I came to Marrow Creek because a retired construction inspector contacted me. That doesn't fix what you hid. No, but it explains why I came. She drew out a thick envelope. The inspector had spent years tracking unresolved safety complaints tied to Northline Structural Services. He'd died of heart failure before Eleanor reached him. His daughter gave her the remaining papers. They showed a pattern. Safety warnings marked resolved without proof. Inspection dates changed after the fact. Supervisors rewarded for avoiding delays. And Northline was now the lead structural contractor on Ironwood Landing. Eleanor had left Shaw Meridian's board 3 years earlier after Claire refused to suspend Northline over evidence the lawyers considered incomplete. Eleanor believed the pattern was real. Claire believed her mother was asking the company to act before the claims could be verified. Mother and daughter stopped listening long before they stopped speaking. The storm was an accident, Eleanor said. Meeting you was an accident. Staying silent was my choice. I'm sorry. You deserved to hear it from me sooner. The apology didn't erase his anger. It let the conversation continue. Vincent unlocked the cabinet holding Rachel's files and opened the original warning email from the week she died. Eleanor recognized the tracking code. Northline's archive showed the warning entered the system Monday morning. It was opened twice. At 2:36 Tuesday afternoon, someone changed the status to resolved. Rachel died Wednesday. There was no document showing a repair, no photograph, no inspection, no second calculation. For 14 months, Vincent had wondered whether his warning had simply been lost in a crowded system. Now, the record showed something worse. They saw it, he said. Yes, and somebody closed it. He sat very still. He'd imagined finding proof many times and thought it would bring relief or rage. Instead, it brought silence. Rachel had gone to work believing that when someone found danger, the people above her would respond. Someone had responded. They'd changed a word on a screen. Eleanor asked to use his phone. This time she called her daughter. Claire answered on the second ring. Eleanor told her to come to Marrow Creek and bring the company's compliance director. Claire asked whether her mother was hurt. Eleanor said the physical danger had passed. The other danger hadn't. When she gave Vincent's name, Claire went quiet. Rachel Rowan's disputed claim had crossed Shaw Meridian's legal department because Northline had requested contractual protection from any lawsuit. Claire had seen the surname. She'd never seen the family. I'll come, she said. Claire arrived 4 days later, stepping from a black SUV in a charcoal coat beside Dana Brooks, Shaw Meridian's director of compliance. No camera crew, no public relations team. She entered the Rowan kitchen, prepared to recover her mother from a stranger who might have discovered her identity and found an opportunity. Then she saw Eleanor in Rachel's old green cardigan. She saw Lucy working on fractions beside her. She saw the city citation lying next to a box of crayons, and Vincent cutting the crust from his daughter's sandwich while Dana opened the first contractor file. Lucy looked up. Are you Miss Ellie's daughter? Claire said she was. She was really cold that night. Lucy went back to her worksheet. There was no accusation in it. That made it harder to hear. Claire asked whether Vincent had contacted reporters or demanded money. He'd done neither. He laid the 2 Ironwood plans, Rachel's warning, and the permit suspension on the table. I'm not asking you to pay me. What are you asking? Reopen Rachel's record. Give the workshop a real inspection. Stop Ironwood until the public sees the actual plan. Claire explained she could suspend Shaw Meridian's participation, but she couldn't overturn a city order or declare Northline legally responsible for Rachel's death. Vincent already knew that. He wasn't asking her to become a judge. He was asking her to use the authority she had. Dana began preserving the company's records that afternoon. The first review confirmed the tracking code and the closure time and identified the employee credentials used to close Vincent's warning. They belonged to Martin Kessler, Northline's regional operations director. Kessler now supervised Ironwood Landing, but the evidence wasn't complete, and Claire wanted the investigation handled privately. She proposed suspending Northline, reopening Rachel's claim, and negotiating with the city before making any public accusation. We can stop the damage without announcing findings. We haven't finished verifying, she said. You want to keep this inside the company. I want to verify it, and the family's losing their homes. They'll be protected while we review the records. Vincent glanced at the closure notice beside Lucy's crayons. They were told that before the inspection started. Claire stiffened. You think I came here to hide this? I think you still want control of the story. She didn't answer. For the first time, Eleanor didn't step between them. The investigation ran 9 days. Dana issued a preservation hold. Outside counsel pulled archived email logs. A forensic accountant reviewed the project's public engagement payments. Vincent compared inspection dates against property records and acquisition refusals. It didn't produce an instant confession. Some emails were missing. Several invoices looked legitimate until the accountants asked to see the work behind them. One Northline supervisor claimed the contractor plan had never been meant for construction. Then Vincent found a truck turning calculation attached to a private bid package. It used the disputed road through Birch Street. The company hadn't merely drawn the second route, it had priced the project around it. The pattern grew one piece at a time. 11 homes sat along that route. All 11 owners had rejected purchase offers. All 11 properties were inspected within 6 weeks. No other neighborhood in Marrow Creek received comparable enforcement. Then the accountant found $172,000 in community consulting payments to Sloan Civic Strategies. The company belonged to Derek Sloan's brother-in-law. There were invoices, but when the lawyers asked for reports, meeting records, or completed work, none could be produced. Claire still hesitated to release the findings before the outside review was finished. Then Derek made his move. As the 6th week began, Marrow Creek posted a temporary closure order on Vincent's workshop citing a potential electrical hazard. The panel hadn't changed since the earlier inspection. A local website published a photograph of Eleanor entering Vincent's house and accused him of manipulating the elderly mother of a billionaire. His address appeared beneath the article. Lucy stayed home from school after strangers began driving slowly past the property. Claire offered private security and a hotel suite. Vincent accepted the security outside the house and refused the hotel. "I'm not moving, Lucy, because somebody printed a lie." That afternoon, Derek contacted Claire's office. I was careful. Once the compliance pressure makes continued operation impractical. Mr. Rowan may become more receptive to the acquisition offer. I believe the situation can still be managed if Shaw Meridian maintains its commitment. On its own, the language sounded administrative. Placed beside the targeted inspections, the closure order, and the payments to his relative, the meaning was clear. Derek had expected the pressure to work. Claire sat at Vincent's table while Lucy colored a house with 4 people in front of it. For years, Claire had told herself she couldn't personally read every report or supervise every contractor. That part was true. What she hadn't admitted was that Shaw Meridian rewarded the people who prevented delays and treated warnings as obstacles. She'd built a system where silence was profitable. "I thought scale meant trusting the people below me," she said. "You have to trust them," Vincent replied. "Then what should I have done?" "Make sure telling you the truth doesn't punish them." Claire looked toward Rachel's photograph. "How do you know it would have changed anything?" Vincent looked at the closed workshop through the kitchen window. "Because silence is how Rachel died." That night, Claire told Shaw Meridian's board the company would withdraw from the current Ironwood agreement, suspend Northline, and cooperate with the city ethics investigation. Her attorneys warned a public statement could expose the company to litigation. Claire understood. She also understood that correcting everything privately would preserve the same imbalance that had allowed the harm. Vincent had taken the truth into a public room because nobody with power had listened in private. 6 weeks to the day after Eleanor knocked on the workshop door, Marrow Creek City Hall filled beyond capacity. Residents stood along the walls. Reporters took the back row. Derek Sloan sat at the center table, composed and confident, expecting Claire to protect a $465 million investment. Vincent reached the microphone first, Lucy beside Eleanor in the 3rd row, holding his old work glove in both hands. He showed the chamber the 2 plans. He explained the hidden road. He showed the soil report certified before the samples existed. He laid out the inspections targeting the properties needed for the contractor route. Then Derek interrupted. He held up an invoice from Vincent's business. 3 months earlier, Vincent had been paid $650 by the excavation company that sent him the contractor plan. Derek turned to the crowd. "Mr. Rowan has presented himself as an independent citizen. I was paid by a company seeking work on Ironwood Landing." The room shifted. Several council members looked toward Vincent. A reporter began typing. He received a private contractor document because he wanted work connected to this project. His objections began only after that work failed to develop. For the first time that morning, Derek seemed to have found a way out. Vincent didn't deny the invoice. "The company paid me to estimate drainage quantities. That's how I received the second plan. So you had a financial interest. I had a $650 job, you wanted more. That's your statement. Vincent set the original email request under the camera. The excavation company had asked him to price the drawing because it didn't match the public documents. The date was 9 days before Vincent learned his own property lay on the contractor route. Then he displayed the estimate. At the bottom, he'd written, "Do not rely on quantities until permit drawing conflict is resolved." He had warned the contractor before he ever spoke at City Hall. Still, Derek pressed, "These are private documents provided through a bidder. The city has never confirmed this route was approved." That was when Claire stood. Derek's expression eased. He believed the person with the most money in the room would protect the deal. Claire walked to the microphone. "My company has confirmed that the second route was included in Shaw Meridian's contractor bid package." The room went silent. It was not an unauthorized sketch. Contractors were asked to price it. Derek's advantage vanished. Claire introduced herself as chief executive of Shaw Meridian Development. She confirmed her company had not ordered the inspections of Vincent's property. Then she said the harder thing. "Our investment created the leverage that made those inspections useful." She announced Shaw Meridian was withdrawing from the current Ironwood agreement. All Northline contracts were suspended. The company would turn its records over to independent investigators and the appropriate state authorities. She did not claim innocence. She said Shaw Meridian had rewarded speed without adequately protecting the people who reported risk. Dana distributed the payment records connecting the project account to Derek's relative. Then Claire played Derek's recorded message. "Once the compliance pressure makes continued operation impractical, Mr. Rowan may become more receptive to the acquisition offer." Derek called it a routine discussion of regulatory circumstances. The city ethics attorney stood. She confirmed Derek had failed to disclose his family's financial interest in Sloan Civic Strategies, and that inspection requests had originated through communications tied to his development office. The council removed Derek as chair of the development committee and barred him from any Ironwood decision. Vincent's fines and closure order were suspended pending an independent inspection. The redevelopment agreement was placed on hold. The evidence was referred to the Ohio Ethics Commission and the county prosecutor. Derek wasn't arrested inside the chamber. No judge declared the case finished that night. Real justice took longer. But when he left the room, the residents he'd called obstacles watched him walk out without authority. Outside City Hall, Claire found Eleanor at the bottom of the steps. For 2 years, mother and daughter had communicated through brief messages, assistance, and long silences. "I kept telling myself I needed more proof," Claire said. "You have it now," Eleanor said. "I know." Eleanor took her hand. Nothing between them was fully repaired, but neither woman let go. Claire later found Vincent. She apologized for questioning his motives and for trying to keep the investigation private. He didn't rush to comfort her. "You don't need me to make this easier for you." "I know. What matters is what happens next." Claire nodded. "I understand." 8 months later, Derek Sloan appeared before a county judge. Investigators proved he'd used city inspections to pressure homeowners, concealed his family's financial interest, and helped direct project money toward a company that provided no documented services. He pleaded guilty to felony bribery and tampering with public records. The court sentenced him to 20 months in state custody, ordered repayment of the $172,000, and barred him from holding public office. Before sentencing, he made a brief statement. "I chose Vincent Rowan because I believed grief had made him easier to pressure. I knew his daughter depended on that workshop. I called it redevelopment because that sounded better than admitting what I was doing." He recognized his mistake. It didn't erase the consequence. The independent inspection found the workshop safe. The city restored Vincent's permit and returned the fine. Rachel's case was reopened after investigators confirmed Northline had closed the warning without corrective documentation. Her name was removed from the finding that had blamed her for entering an unsafe area. Vincent later opened Rowan Safety and Estimating. Not a large company. 2 employees, 3 desks, a new sign above the old workshop door. Eleanor rented a small house 3 blocks away. She picked Lucy up from school twice a week and kept Rachel's blue blanket folded over the back of her sofa. Claire began visiting Marrow Creek on Sundays. At first she came for Eleanor, then she stayed for dinner. She and Vincent did not fall in love quickly. They disagreed too often for that. Claire believed some projects could rebuild struggling towns. Vincent believed no project deserved trust without accountability. But neither of them walked away when the conversation turned uncomfortable. That was new for both of them. One spring evening, Lucy's school held a music performance. Vincent arrived early and sat beside Eleanor in the second row. One chair stayed empty on his other side. Eleanor noticed. She said nothing. The lights dimmed. Children walked onto the stage. Just before the teacher raised her hands, Claire came through the rear doors. No driver, no assistant. 2 paper cups of coffee in her hands. She stopped beside Vincent. "Is this seat taken?" He looked at the empty chair. "I saved it." Claire sat down. On stage, Lucy found the 3 of them in the audience. Her eyes moved from Vincent to Eleanor to Claire, and she smiled so widely she missed the first note. Afterward, the 4 of them walked toward the parking lot. Lucy held Eleanor's hand and talked without stopping. Then she looked at Claire. "Are you coming Sunday too?" Claire looked at Vincent. She didn't answer for him. Vincent took one of the coffee cups from her hand. "I'll save you a seat." Claire changed Vincent's life by choosing the truth when silence would have protected her. Do you think he was right to give her a chance? Tell us in the comments. And if you believe quiet fathers deserve stories where courage, family, and integrity still matter, subscribe to Soul Dad Stories. Another father everyone underestimated is waiting in the next story.